It appears that we have a full attendance from the committee meeting with Councilor Fay, Councilor Poland, and with Councilor Davidoff and Mayor Cantor and Councilor Winograd as well. And we have the whole town team here to discuss the various items that are on today's agenda. And forgive me for turning my head, but I'm working from my wife's office this evening, so these are in a different angle. So with that, we'll move to item number 2. And we'll move to item number 2, the 2A. I'm just gonna, if it's all right, if it pleases the committee, I'm just gonna jump to item E and have a vote to approve the minutes while we're here, so we can just get that over with.
I'll make a motion.
Seeing no objection, the minutes are approved. We'll jump back to item A here, and with that, there's a resolution to revise the fund balance policy of the town of West Hartford's general fund. This has been an item that has been discussed a few times, and there have been a lot of changes that have been going on with regards to how credit agencies are looking at towns' municipal balance sheets. And with that, I will hand it over to, I believe, Rick and Peter to discuss this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. As the council knows, this is essentially the time of the year where we issue bonds to fund our capital improvement plan projects. And part of that process involves a presentation to our 2 rating agencies. And we utilize Standard & Poor's and Moody's. And then leading up to this year's presentation, which took place just a couple of weeks ago back in January, we were informed by Moody's that they had revised the metrics that they use to rate their AAA rated communities. And that change puts a larger emphasis on a municipality's general fund balance and would require AAA rated communities to have a fund balance of 15%. You may recall at our last Finance and Administration meeting, we discussed our fund balance at that time, and the council authorized us to use a portion of last year's surplus, raising our fund balance from where it was at 9.1%. And using fund balance, we raised it to 9.2%, which still obviously falls short of the 15% that Moody's would require. So we're recommending that we revise our current fund balance policy, which was last revised back in 2016, so that similar to what we did just a couple of weeks ago, we would commit a certain percentage of our annual surplus to fund balance, so that we could continue to move towards the goal of reaching 16%, 15-16%. Our current fund balance is $28.68 million. So although the news from Moody's did surprise us, we also know that, and we do agree that it is sound fiscal practice to maintain a sizable fund balance. In fact, the Government Finance Officers Association recommends that at a minimum, municipalities maintain a general fund balance of no less than 2 months of either regular fund operating revenues or expenditures. So if we were to use the GFOA model and use 2 months of revenue or expenditures, that would actually bring us closer to the 15-16% that Moody's recommends. So I'll stop there for a moment, and through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn things over to our Director of Finance for anything that Peter would want to add to those comments.
Thanks, Rick. It's been a while now that every time we issue debt every year, and every year, Moody's looks at all of our balances and all our funds, but there's always a particular comment about how we have a low fund balance in comparison to our peers in Connecticut. The average AAA community in Connecticut has a fund balance of a little under 14%. And again, ours was 9.1% at the time. When we received that notification from Moody's that they changed their metrics, they changed their metrics for fund balance ratio. They went up to 30%. Believe it or not, there are communities and cities across the country that have over 30% fund balances. They also changed the metrics. They basically incorporated us into the Hartford statistical area, which includes Hartford, East Hartford, Middletown. And when they look at our economic development, they kind of group us in that particular group. So when we had we invited Moody's to come up this year, and they did come up. And when we had our presentation to them, after the presentation, Mayor Cantor and Rick and Kristen Gorski took them on a tour of the development properties, development projects that were either ongoing or pending, to basically, show them that we are an outlier here. We're not Hartford, we're not East Hartford, we're not Middletown, but we have a lot of development here. Moody's was looking for a more targeted approach because the prior fund balance policy said when we can, we will. But I think that they were looking for a more of an accelerated process. So I went to the town manager. I said, look, we should draft a policy where we have a targeted process. And this policy basically says that right now we have a 9.2% fund balance ratio. At the end of the year, when we have a surplus, the first thing we need to do is, number one, make sure we can maintain that ratio. Number two, after that, we should take a third of the surplus and build that ratio. And anything after that, we can do our normal transfers to CNRE or the Utility Services Fund. And they specifically asked, well, what does that mean if you have, like a $3 million surplus? So we went through the steps, and we've been fortunate to have decent surpluses on a year-over-year basis, but this would grow our fund balance at a much quicker pace. And it would demonstrate to Moody's that we're serious about growing it because we are committing part of our surplus every year. And, my impression after the meeting was it was well received. And, it's going to be a great part of their consideration for us to keep our AAA amongst other considerations such as economic development and a few other things that we talked about during our presentation. So basically that's the reason behind this, again, to have a more targeted approach to building our fund balance and maintaining our AAA rating, attempting to with Moody's.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, we'll turn it back to the committee for questions.
Thank you both for that. Looking around, Mayor Cantor, did you want to say anything before?
Sure. So we had a wonderful meeting, and it was it was a lot of positive feedback, but this is a really important part of the puzzle. And I will say one of the things that we did talk about was our pension, which really had been a critical financial situation. We really had to right the ship on it. It took years to it took many years to get to this place, decisions way before us, but we were in a position where the pension really was a challenging situation for us every year, and refinancing and issuing the pension obligation bonds when we did all that was a really important part of this. And we have a reserve in our pension, a pension reserve, which is something that we talked about with them as well. So in essence, we really have multiple reserves, and our reserves, when you add them all up together, are around 30%. But that undesignated fund balance is really where they put a lot of emphasis and weight. And so we are very financially stable. That's the point. And we do feel that those financial commitments to certain areas to mitigate fluctuations and changes in the market is a really smart way to approach our budget. But that being said, this is something that is important to them, and it will take time, but I do think that commitment to building up that fund balance over time, this is the right approach. It shouldn't put too much of a burden on our taxpayers, on the town, the way we run our town, yet it shows this very this real commitment to building up the fund balance in a more exact way. Thank you.
Anyone else from the committee?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, please. This is Mary. Just really quick, just refresh my memory. They're saying now it has to be 30%, and that's a change.
No,
as Peter had said. What was it before?
Why don't we go backwards and
So through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilor Fay. So
repeat what you said earlier. That would probably be easier. And I think it's also in there's a few documents that were provided as well.
Right.
I think the goal is, and it's stated in the resolution, it's a goal of 16%.
Mm-hmm. If I can answer that, Mr. Chairman, Moody's did increase the ceiling on that to 30%, but when they take into consideration local governments that have the ability to raise taxes, they also take into consideration the balances we have in all the other funds, because some governments out there are mainly funded by sales tax revenue and are not as stable as being able to levy taxes. So for us, if we can get up to 15%, along with the fund balance we have in the other funds, as the mayor stated, we have about $26 million in our POB reserve fund. Altogether, I think we came up with roughly $80 million of total fund balances all together. They wanted us to get up to a level that's comparable with our peers in Connecticut. And that level is around 15%. And that would satisfy them over time, of course, not all at once, but that would satisfy them that we belong in this highest rated AAA grouping, because we have the same balance as our peers.
Okay, thank you. I was just going back to it. Was it an increase from what was expected prior? I'm just trying to understand.
No, Mary, what happened is there has been a change in policy from the credit agencies, and this is what they're looking for now. And I think we discussed this at the last council meeting as well. It's really been sprung upon us, and we are trying to do our best to comply with it to keep our AAA bond rating. And there's kind of really nothing more to that other than this is a new item. To use a sports analogy, the goalposts have been slightly moved here, and we are doing our best to adjust to the new requirements, or not requirements, but new expectations set forth for AAA bond rated communities.
No, yeah, I understand AAA is extremely critical and important, and it's been great that we've been able to maintain that. I was just trying to understand if it was a deficiency, or, to your point, the goalposts moved, and if it's the latter, then we just have to build towards it. I was just trying to put it into context. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a change in the field of the new municipal financing area, and we are adjusting as we do almost every year. And I think this has been why we have such a great team here who's got us prepared for that. And we had last week, as you recall, and as Peter and Rick have spoken to, and the mayor spoken to, we had the rating agencies in last week, and they had a meeting, and this was talked about. This was discussed. The discussion of this resolution here today, as we discussed at the last council meeting, was brought up, and that is why we are here today to formally put it through the process and then vote on it at our next council meeting. All right. seeing any other questions. Oh, yes. Ms. Poland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You indicated that this is around what our peer communities in Connecticut have as reserves. Can you say which communities they consider to be our peers? Or did you already say that and I missed it?
No, I mean, I can tell you around us, Avon is a AAA, Simsbury is a AAA, Farmington, Glastonbury. Then you have the Fairfield County AAAs. You have Greenwich and Darien and Norwalk. They're considered our peer communities. And I just want to make a comment here because a couple weeks ago I received an email from the chairman of the pension board from Greenwich, and he was requesting some information from our pension. And he said, well, I'm reaching out to you because I consider West Hartford a peer community. And I thought that was a great, great pat on the back for us. So, yeah, those are the immediate communities around us.
Thank you.
Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding is we're updating the fund balance policy at the recommendation of our Director of Finance, our manager, and to be in line with what our peer communities have done. This isn't something new for us. The last time I think it was pointed out we did it in 2016. We have always been a well-managed fiscal house. We don't take unnecessary risk or do things that are financially irresponsible. And I commend the mayor and the manager, Ms. Gorski, for taking the Moody's representatives on a tour of our community. I don't believe that there's one portion of our town, north, south, east, or west, that is not currently under consideration or has approvals for future economic development, which translates into grand list growth. And we all know that grand list growth translates into more taxpayers, and more taxpayers are healthy for our little local community. So as a community that's fully built out, we don't have more land to develop like some of our peer communities. So when we decide to vote on these various projects that come before the council, they basically are redevelopment proposals. And as been noted over the last year or so, we're talking tens of millions of dollars per project. So I don't think that this is something new to this committee or to this council with respect to where we're going financially or what commitments we're making. It's been a very steady progress, and I think that's important to show. And we've demonstrated over the years that West Hartford is consistently keeps its eye on the ball with respect to its finances, and we are forward thinking. We are fiscally managed very properly, and this policy that we'll be voting on next Tuesday, is in line with those things. So it's not a deviation from where we've been. It's more keeping the train on the track. So I commend all those Peter and Rick and the rest of the team for and the mayor for moving us forward, Mr. Chairman. So those would be my comments and my understanding of the situation, why this item was on the agenda this evening.
Thank you for that, Mr. Davidoff. With no further questions, I would just close with we are taking the direction of our financial advisors, our people that have guided us to this AAA bond rating today. We are taking in all the information that we have available to us, and I think making the best decision with what we know out there. And I appreciate the town manager, the mayor, and Peter, and your work that you've done on this to really, I think, ever since I got on this council, has been one of obviously the most important things that we do is to protect the AAA bond rating, because it does at the end of the day save us money, a significant amount of money on our ability to borrow, and I think that's a huge thing that this staff takes significant pride in guarding, and I appreciate that, and I'm happy to support this, and glad that we can move this forward. With that being said, hold on one second. We'll move on to.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask one question, please? I would like to report back to Moody's that the Finance Committee was in full support of this. Would that be appropriate?
Yes, I mean, we don't have to take a vote on it, but we here today, it appears that both Ms. Poland and I believe Ms. Fay are supportive of this. Would you say
Yeah.
that, Fay?
Would it be
Yeah.
helpful for us to take a vote?
That's
Well,
correct.
I could tell them that the committee was in favor of it. They're going to be reviewing this, I believe, prior to the council meeting when you're going to take action. So I think it would be beneficial if I contacted them and said that the full committee was in support of this and it's going to the full council for a vote.
I'll just do this for you, so it's easy enough. We'll do a voice vote in support of item 2A. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We have adoption by voice vote for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 2B, resolution appropriating funds in the capital non-recurring expenditure funds for 5 vehicles. This, we have also touched on this item previously, as there is a significant need for this. And I will let Mr. Ludwig touch on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution will allow the fire department to utilize capital non-recurring expenditure funds to purchase 4 light-duty vehicles to meet the town's emergency management needs. Included in this request would be the purchase of a paramedic unit vehicle, which allows us to deploy paramedics in smaller fly vehicles, as we refer to them, instead of our large apparatus. Another vehicle would be utilized for our fire marshal's office. We are in need of a vehicle for our fire marshal and deputy fire marshal to go out and do inspections, and of course, when there's a fire, do their work there as well. And then we have 2 emergency management SUVs that would be essentially housed at our headquarters. And they would be to meet the various needs of our team at headquarters, including our EMS officer, our community support officer, as well as support for our CERT team as well. The total amount that we would be requesting from the CNRE fund would be $250,000. And that does include $25,000 that we've built in for potential cost overruns. So if we're to keep it below that 250, we wouldn't have to utilize that 25,000, but we'll know more as we go out and actively make these purchases. So I will stop there and happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you for that explanation and the reason for this. I'm seeing no questions. We will move to item C, resolution appropriating funds for building inspector, senior planner positions.
Thank you. And this resolution would allow us to provide our community development department with much needed support in the building inspection division as well as the planning division to continue to help them meet the needs of our community. We have been experiencing a significant increase in large, as we've just pointed out by Councilor Davidoff, large development projects throughout town, as well as significant increases in residential projects. And we've been at the point now where we're not able to keep up with the demand, quite simply. So we're presently at a 4-week backlog and have been consistently at that 4-week backlog going back a year plus. And to provide some data around this, back in fiscal year 21, we performed 11,399 inspections, and that spread out over 6.5 building inspectors, which is 1,754 inspections per inspector. For the last 12 months, we've seen that an increase from 11,000 to 12,584 inspections, or 1,900 inspections per inspector, up from the 1,700 inspections per inspector. So, and this 1,900 inspections per inspector is significantly higher than neighboring communities. In fact, inquiring some of our colleagues around Hartford County, we've only found one other town that was over 1,000 inspections per inspector in our region. So this adding this position would probably could use 2 positions. We will go for 1 right now. A request through the committee, an additional inspector to help lower that per inspection per inspector inspection and lower that 4-week backlog down to a more reasonable level of 1. Ideally we could turn these around in a week, but it has been a significant issue for us, for the department, and it's something I've received continuously received complaints from residents and from contractors regarding this backlog. So I do think it's a significant need for us. And this increase in development is having that same impact on our planning division. With the exception that our planning division staff also supports our Town Planning and Zoning Commission, our Design Review Advisory Committee, our TPZ, our planning staff is also involved with DRAC. And DRAC is now meeting at least twice a month, sometimes 3 times a month because of all the proposed development happening. They also support our Zoning Board of Appeals Commission. So, between that support and then our zoning permit process, our special development district applications that you've seen and will continue to see as we move through the spring, as well as our zoning ordinance amendments, our staff is certainly struggling at the current level. And this addition for our planning staff will bring our staff in the planning department back to where it was previously when we were essentially building Blueback Square, going back over 15 years now. So, and when you look at all the development that's happening around town right now, literally, as was pointed out, every corner of town and everywhere in between, the amount of development that's occurring right now far surpasses what we did back when Blueback Square was coming online. So 2 critical needs that we have for both departments, and would happy to answer any questions that the committee had, but would appreciate your support for this need as well. So I will, through you, Mr. Chairman, turn it over to the committee for any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. I think there's an expression, it takes money to make money. And I think that right here is money that we need to make an investment into in order for us to continue to have our town roles grow at an effective and safe rate. I think that's a number 1 thing. We have to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of people on staff to make sure that buildings are safe and inspected. I think we saw, we had some issues with it last summer where we had some issues going on inside the buildings where we weren't just able to get over to them. I think it was at Milcraft, right?
Yeah.
That's just one case, but now we have, hundreds of units going up throughout the community and probably thousands over the last 5 years. We need extra hands. It's just not feasible to do it at this rate. And it doesn't seem like the development is going to be slowing too much down right now. So again, I think I've said this, I think we have to continue to catch lightning in a bottle here and move forward. And that takes specific investments in particularly our workforce. And we have to make sure that the people that are doing this for us also aren't overworked and want to actually stay with us. It's part of creating a work environment that allows for people to want to come back and do work with us. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions on this particular item. This obviously just makes sense being at the rate. I don't know, in the last 6 months, how many units have we put online?
Over the last 6 months, we've brought on about 300 plus units. And I would say over the next 12 months, you will see that number go to 1,000 units, with all the projected, seeing obviously things that you've approved, but then seeing some of the projects that are going through our design review advisory committee right now, between Yukon, Farmington Avenue, the old SK Lavery building, New Britain Avenue, we'll have a total of about 1,000 new units being brought online if everything's approved, certainly over the next several months.
To add on to that, we we have a housing market where people are not moving; they're reinvesting in their house, and that requires inspection. I know everyone on this council has probably been, touched or talked to by a specific person about kind of a backlog that's taking place on those inspections. This is something that we need to deal with now, so that people this is about continuing to make the community happy with the services that we're providing, and with the anticipated grand list growth that will happen with those 1,000 units going online, we have to make an investment here as well. So, thinking everyone is on, seeing everyone, not seeing any hands. I will move to item D. And Mr. Dakers, I believe this is your show now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can I'll take a moment just to introduce Joe. Joe Dakers and Patrick Sullivan is with Joe this evening. Joe and Pat and their team recently completed the 2020 Grand List report. I want to just personally thank them for all of their efforts and all the hard work that goes into to this process, coming off a year where we had revaluation last year, which is as we know, every 5 years, an incredible amount of work that takes place in our assessment office. But as you probably saw in the report, our grand list grew from 7.17 billion to 7.22 billion, resulting in $45.6 million in organic growth. And I just wanted to remind the council that this is a year-over-year comparison of our net taxable grand list. But you'll remember that as a result of last year's revaluation, we phased in 75% of the revaluation last year, and we'll phase in the remaining 25% this year. So last year, the phased-in revaluation grand list was actually $6.99 billion. So when we move through the budget process over the next few weeks, we'll be bringing on an additional $231 million in that phased-in value, which will be applied to this year's budget process. So just wanted to remind folks of that. So through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn things over to our assessor, Mr. Dakers, and Mr. Sullivan.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to give you a little backstory on the 2022 grand list. As Rick pointed out, we had an enormous increase resulting from the 21 revaluation, about 12.2% overall. And of course, with this year's revaluation, that 2021 revaluation number just kind of grossly overshadows the growth of this year's list. This year's list is only about $45 million. Last year, we had a $781.2 million increase in the list. But as pointed out in some of the remarks by the mayor and her, I saw a report this morning. There's still a tremendous amount of activity that's going on in West Hartford. And I'd like to give you some backstory that you don't see in that report that was provided to you. For example, in terms of new construction, we had 1,358 parcels that had an assessment increase with the 2022 grand list, totaling $19.4 million in increased assessment value. We also had 297 parcels that experienced an assessment decrease, totaling approximately $2.6 million in assessment value. So the net increase for this property class area is 16.797, you can call it $16.8 million in increased assessment, net taxable assessment. That's one aspect of this. The other aspect concerns a lot of shifting of property types. For example, the town has a number of leased parking lots around town. I think there are about 18 of them, about 18 parking lots. All of these parking lots have been taxable for years, and the town has been reimbursing the property owners for the taxes on the leased space that they're using for public parking. There was a change in the Connecticut General Statute 12-81 subsection 4 that made all property that's leased by a municipality, whether real or personal, tax exempt. So for the 2022 grand list, we shifted those parking lots, some of them entirely and some of them only a portion of it, depending on the lease terms that we have, which totaled about $9.2 million that left the taxable rolls that went to tax exempt property. We also have the Yukon ball fields that was made tax exempt for the 2022 grand list. In prior years, it was taxable. We also had $1.5 million in assessment reduction on other town-owned properties. Some of the properties had some issues where there was a demolition. Some of the school properties had some of these modulars removed. I don't think they ever took out a building permit, and we discovered that in this last assessment cycle. So we adjusted our list, removing those from the assessment rolls. Fourthly, Kingswood Oxford School, the Children's Museum, went from exempt to taxable as a result of them no longer using that property anymore for the purposes that the exemption was originally extended. The Montessori School went from taxable to exempt. The Montessori School had an issue a year ago where their administrative staff failed to file a timely exemption application, and they were put on the taxable list for the 21 grand list. They have now satisfied their requirements, so they were moved back to the exempt status for the 2022 grand list. We also had the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents. They were given an exemption on their property on Kaya Avenue by the Board of Assessors. And we had a tax appeal on St. Mary's Rehab Facility that went from taxable to exempt. And finally, we had 3 homes in West Hartford that went from exempt to taxable. One was owned by the Salvation Army, 1689 Asylum Avenue. And then we had the Chabad House property on Tanglewood Road and Kirkwood Road. Those went from exempt to taxable. So that's a lot of the backstory behind the real property grand list. So the numbers that were presented to you in the report was really a summary, and we didn't deem it necessary to give this level of detail in that report. So, which is why I appreciate this opportunity to share this additional information with you. The personal property list, we had an extraordinary item last year. We had this tunnel boring machine that was being used, rented by the MDC for their storm water project, coming from the South Meadows and Hartford to here on, I think, Talcott Road. That equipment was removed prior to the October 1st grand list. And as a result of that, we saw a reduction in that property class of $6.5 million in assessment value. Now, there were other changes within that property class. We had 292 businesses that were removed from the list, relocated, went out of business, etc. We had 277 new businesses that came into town. And we had 14 businesses that had some sort of name change. They were here already, but they changed their name, so they're not considered as a new business in town. Those are some big changes in that property class. Motor vehicle, finally, really speaks for itself in the report. Motor vehicles had a net increase of $34.7 million. I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah, $34.7 million, which resulted in a net increase of 6% for motor vehicles. What's happening here is we still have, although we had 1,160 new vehicles approximately, that market is still strong, stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the new manufacturers of cars are ramping up, and we're starting to see depreciation now increasing on these used cars, and so the prices are coming down. So I think we might see more of that for the 2023 grand list. That covers all of the basic property classes and the information that I wanted to share with you. I welcome any questions that you may have in this regard.
Mr. Jakers, thank you for your always thorough report, and appreciate that. While the overall number isn't where I think we would love it to be, I think what we can see is there are brighter skies on the horizon coming into next year. I think that while I don't like to hear that the car taxes are up, I think it's because we have a lot of people that are buying pretty nice cars in town, as I've seen myself. And as you said, that number, I think last time we talked in detail about this, Mr. Jakers, I was looking at buying one of those SUVs for my growing family, and I was very sad about those stickers, the sticker shock that I was getting as I needed to squeeze 5 people into a car. But nonetheless, I think we are starting to see that kind of flatten out, and that's great to see. But at the same time, it's great for us as a town to have that come in during this year. Ms. Poland, anyone else have any questions? Nope. Okay. Oh, Mr. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be remiss, Mr. Dakers, if I didn't compliment you on, like always, a very thorough report that took weeks, months to compile to get all that data. And I appreciate the efforts of Mr. Sullivan and everyone else in your department to compile all these things. As a small business owner, I know what that personal property form looks like, and to review those and make certain that those are accurate and reflecting what really exists there. And it's been challenging because of the pandemic and the ability to see firsthand. But I think with the pandemic starting to move beyond us, we're able to get out in the field a little bit more and get a firsthand view of everything like we used to do that. And I'll just say that I did speak to a business owner recently, and they had an interaction with your office, and they wanted me to tell you that the next time I saw you, that I should just pass this along, that while they were probably negatively impacted by the data that they provided, the professionalism that was accorded to them was something that they felt was very important to point out. And during the entire time that I've known you and dealt with you and heard your reports, I said, well, I'm not surprised, because Mr. Dacre and his staff are above board professionals to the nth degree. And if there's an error, they're the first to admit there's an error. But if they're right, they'll stick to their guns. And just want to let you know that's the reputation that has been garnered. So I feel very confident that the report that you've produced for the council this evening is accurate. It reflects the values as they currently exist. And I'm appreciative of all the hard work and efforts that have gone into to that report. So thank you for all the work you do, and please share that amongst all the people in the department.
I will. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dakers. Amen to what Mr. Davidoff just preached, and can't wait to have further discussions on the prospects of future property here in Connecticut, or in our town, as we do before the entire council during budget season. So, looking forward to that. With that, I will let you get back to your family this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Good night, all.
Good night.
Yeah. Bye.
With that, we will move to item 4, the Finance Department's update on the current operating budget projection.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to our Director of Finance to give us the good news on our most recent projection.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete Privatera, Finance Director. I think I say this a lot, that I'm probably one of the most conservative guys out there when it comes to projecting, because we don't like surprises. But it got to a point where I was reviewing the revenue estimates, especially on interest income, and it was just overwhelming. There are 2 areas that we've seen a significant increase on. One is investment or interest income, investment earnings, that are driving this huge surplus change from last year to this year. The interest rates have pretty much stayed at the same levels. However, with the inflush of, with the infusion of all the tax revenue that we got recently from the second property tax collection, we just had to reflect what we really felt was going to happen, and that was a very significant positive impact on our revenue stream. On the expenditure side, we did a thorough analysis of public safety overages, and we felt that that the fire department is almost fully staffed. The police department, I think they have 3 people coming out of the police academy soon, and they'll be close to being fully staffed. When we looked at the recent activity, we felt that we might have been a little overstated on the last report that we had. So we took one more look at it, and we felt comfortable reducing our estimates. Again, I think we're in a very good place right now with respect to our operating budget. We haven't made any adjustment to tax revenue. We're still assuming a 99.1% collection rate. I haven't heard from the revenue collector what the exact second collection came out to, but I'm sure she'll let me know that it's probably the same as it was last year. So I think we're basically gonna see improvement in this surplus amount as the months go on and as we go through the budget process. So I'm pleased that we are where we are right now, and again, we'll continue to monitor the budget and report accordingly on a monthly basis. And if there's any specifics, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Privatera, just for the folks that may be watching this on public access, do you want to just say the number that you're speaking to?
Yeah, the surplus, we're projecting a surplus of a little under $2.3 million for the fiscal year.
Thank you. And that information can be found online through the memos that are provided as well. So, Ms. Poland?
Yes, thank you so much for this report. And it's good to see that halfway through our fiscal year, we're wood. We're positioned pretty well. And also about halfway through the winter, it feels like we might end up, I don't want to jinx anything, but perhaps with a little extra money in the snow removal account. I had a question about the electricity. As we were sort of chatting before the meeting, it occurred to me that our town might be able to also switch suppliers. And is that something that we have looked into, or we're not allowed to do that? I just don't know what the rules are around that.
Yeah, I think we're locked in at a very, very low rate. I think it's 7.3 cents
Oh.
per kilowatt. We're locked in, I believe, for one more year, maybe two. We're very active when it comes to electricity, and I give a lot of credit to Catherine Davini, who's our energy analyst, and Bob Palmer. We get a report once a month on the status of electricity costs, but whenever we see an opportunity to lock in a good rate, or we have virtual net metering contracts. I think we have executed 2 contracts where we're saving money there. I think with respect to electricity, we're in a really good place right now, and we will be for another year or so.
Yeah, that's really great to hear for me personally, but also for anybody who's watching, to see that we are being proactive about, and have been proactive about, trying to get the lowest rate for electricity, since that's probably one of our largest line items, I would think, on an ongoing monthly basis. Thank you.
I just want to say, just on a side note, that during our credit presentation, I did make a mention about the snow budget as well, and everyone pounded on the table and said, "You're jinxing us, you're jinxing us." So with 50-degree temperatures projected for next week, I'm hoping that we'll get through this very, very well. Thank you.
Excellent. Seeing no further questions on this item, Peter, thank you again for your fantastic work in keeping us on the straight and narrow. We'll move to item B, the Human Resources update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did give our HR staff the night off this evening. They've been essentially working around the clock, but happy to answer any questions that you may have on their report that they uploaded. But I will highlight a couple of quick things on the report in terms of we're recruiting like you would not believe. It's been just a crazy 12, 18 months that we've been undergoing. And we presently have 9 active recruitments that are taking place in various departments around town, being led by our HR staff. And then probably the second most important item that is occurring in HR right now is our labor negotiations. We do have 5 contracts that are open right now, and we are in active negotiations with our CSEA reps who represent those particular bargaining units. So it is, it's a challenging time right now to be negotiating a contract. Certainly we're our own budget here at town hall, and certainly our own budgets at home are being impacted by inflation. Certainly our employees are feeling that as well. And that just makes sitting down and try to negotiate, something that, balances the demands that we're having on our budget with where they are personally, is a challenge. So inflation, as we know, is down the last couple of months. It's slowly ratcheting back, and would like to see that continue for a couple more months as we continue active negotiations with our unions. So with that being said, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, for any questions that you folks may have on the report that was uploaded.
Do we see any significant changes coming from the state healthcare exchange? So
we do, yeah. So we are initial information that we're receiving through the state on our state partnership plan is we're looking at an 8 or a 9%. Potentially an 8 or 9% increase in our health insurance rates this year for both the town and the schools. So what we have been doing is we still get our own claims reports. So we have looked at what has been happening with our claims with both the school district and the town, and they are up. You know, a lot of that is a result of coming out of the pandemic and some of the pent up services that folks may have just paused and waited on as we were moving through the pandemic. As we probably have read nationally as well, folks are out there getting the work done that they needed, that they held off on, and I think that's been reflected in our claims. So so it is an up year, but we won't get a final rate from the state probably until April. After we're kind of moving through the process. So we keep in touch with them, we keep in touch with our consultant, and we will budget a number that we think we will end up at. And we'll continue to look at other options as well, if need be.
Mr. Privatera.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add, if you recall, we did transfer, I believe it was $400,000 into the risk fund for health. We kind of we're under the impression, the expectation that there was going to be an increase. So we made a recommendation to the town manager that we move that in there to moderate the increase for next year. So we're trying to be prepared for it as best we can. Thank you.
I feel like $400,000 doesn't cover the 8%, but I appreciate that. If it makes you feel any better, I was a Connecticut plan, my small business on the Connecticut plan that is now going to be obsolete soon. So
I
understand the situation. It is a funky world in healthcare, as per usual, as it is in the United States of America. But as Ms. Bolin can well tell us even more detail from her work. But yeah, you know, that's unfortunate. It really is. You know, hopefully they can figure something out potentially at the state level to do something more to help on that, because you know, we've been pretty aggressive here in the town on this matter, and Ms. Bolin can also talk about that from the Board of Ed side as well. Yeah. But it's just one of those things.
We did. I'll remind everyone, as when we made the move, as Councilor Poland will remember, especially on the Board of Ed side, we saved about a total of $2 million between the town and the schools by making this move back when we did. And I'd also point out that the retiree rate that the state has for our over 65 retirees is still half of what our self-insured over 65 rate was. So we will still, you know, reach some savings in the retiree health arena in the Connecticut State Partnership Plan. So that being said, we will continue to work with them and work on solutions as well as we move forward.
Rick, does CCM tell you, like, comparatively to other states, like, I mean, other states have similar plans of, like, I just got the wording on the power.
Yeah, I haven't heard from CCM on that in regards to what other states are seeing in these types of plans, but we subscribe to a number of healthcare trend surveys. Mm-hmm. You know, from a national perspective, it's, you know, it's like you just pointed out, is a national issue. Inflation spiked everywhere, and certainly we expected to see that in healthcare as well. They weren't going to sit on the sidelines and not take advantage of that environment. It's probably an opinion I shouldn't be sharing, but you know, we did it. We expect to see it, and we are seeing it in our healthcare inflation costs as well. So, thank you.
We lost your audio, Liam.
Sorry, I had to make a last minute change. My computer just pooped out on me. So,
yeah.
Almost made it. Any other questions from members? I'm scrolling, looking like there is none. With that, we have anything for future items that we want to discuss? I guess we can talk about them offline. Thank you all for spending your Monday evening with us. Ms. Poland, I could see you traveled safely, and looking forward to seeing everyone soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thanks,
Take
Arthur.
care.
Have a
Good
good
night,
night.
everyone. See you later.